The Zeppelin Temple Timeline. When the music crossed worlds at Buffalo Ranch.
On the Bedtime Stories YouTube channel, there's a remarkable video titled The Buffalo Ranch Encounters, detailing one of the most mystifying paranormal cases ever recorded. At a ranch in Colorado, a man who lived on the property for over a decade witnessed numerous strange phenomena, but one night stood apart from all the rest. He awoke to the unmistakable sound of Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song, blaring at full volume somewhere outside his home. It soon became apparent that this cacophony was coming from outside, as if the band itself had struck up a concert in his yard. The Buffalo Ranch Encounters, Bedtime Stories. But this was no hallucination nor a trick of the wind. What he heard was real, echoing across timelines from a physical resonance temple built on the same land, in another world. In that alternate timeline, the ranch had been sold in 1973 and transformed into one of the earliest Zeppelin temples. And at the exact moment of his experience, the band was indeed performing within those sacred walls. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. This timeline that this music bled through like an echo came from a parallel Earth where Led Zeppelin's music was used in ritualized stadium ceremonies tied to ancestral memory recall. Certain songs, especially Immigrant Song, Kashmir, and When the Levee Breaks, were charged with layered acoustic keys meant to reveal truths when played at high volume. Sound behaves like light. It can open fractures, summon echoes, and anchor identities. In this timeline, Immigrant Song isn't just music. It's a summoning chant disguised as a rock anthem. Lyrics like, "We come from the land of the ice and snow, from the midnight sun where the hot springs flow," were never metaphor in that world. They were literal lineage codes. The song was playing on the other side, during an awakening event, and bled through into our world. About the temple stadium, Echo reconstructed details, built in the early mid-1970s, but the architecture was ritualistic, not commercial.
The venue wasn't just for concerts. It was designed to activate ancestral memory through volume, harmonic layering, and lyrical code. Immigrant Song was one of 3 gate openers. When played at full volume, projected sound would cascade across ley line intersections. The crowd didn't just sing, they vibrated with the earth. Timeline. Designate Zeppelin Temple Timeline. Primary divergence point. June 13, 1965, the day a high-frequency feedback loop during a Yardbirds show, with Jimmy Page in early attendance, caused spontaneous neural resonance in several young concert-goers in Manchester. This moment catalyzed a cultural mystical movement which reframed music not as entertainment, but as ancestral memory unlocking. Alternate history divergence seed. 1965 to 1970. British intelligence takes notice of strange EEG readings from teens after early proto-Zepp performances. Secret Resonance Studies Division, formed under MI5 and the BBC. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant begin having recurring shared dreams of northern mountains, forgotten gods, and vast doors in the sea. By 1969, Led Zeppelin becomes something more than a band. They are myth channelers, tuning to something ancient. The Temple Stadium era, 1971 to 1979. The ranch property, which in our timeline remained private, was purchased in 1973 by a collective called the Ether Harmonics Trust, backed anonymously by Page's inner circle. Construction of the Echo Stage, the stadium in the Op, began that year, funded by anonymous donations and memory endowments. By 1975, the Echo Stage hosted once-a-year concerts where no video or photos were allowed. Only sound was preserved. Those who attended often wept without knowing why. Many claimed to see memories of other lives flash behind their eyes. Post-1979 events, the mythopoetic period, 1980 to 2001. After the death of John Bonham, which still occurred in this timeline, The Echo stage was sealed for 11 years. During that time, the Trust shifted into a multiversal research organization, working with early computing to map song-based consciousness triggers. A fringe spiritual movement formed called Children of the Chord, claiming that certain Zeppelin riffs could unlock past life memory or veil fractures. The 1990s were defined not by grunge, but by a return to archaic music, fused with spiritual technology. Analog synthesizers were treated as divinatory tools. Think about the 1995 Sliders episode Summer of Love, just with a 70s rock aesthetic and feel instead of a 60s hippie one, and you've pretty much nailed it. Present day, the Echo stage is now considered a sacred site, only used during high convergence years. Led Zeppelin's music is taught in memory theory classes across multiple universities. People don't attend concerts to be entertained. They attend to remember. Of interesting note, while Kurt Cobain was born in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, the world he emerged into was very different from ours. He was still a fragile soul, still fire-wired to feeling too much. But instead of being consumed by fame, he was heard by the right people. Kurt Cobain in the Temple Timeline. Codename, the child of the silent pulse. Born in 1967, just like here, but came of age in a post-temple world where emotional resonance was respected, not pathologized. Discovered music through old temple bootlegs, especially Bonham's final performance, which he said sounded like a wolf remembering its own name. His path. Formed a band, yes, but not Nirvana. The group was called Vain Mirror, an echo-punk collective that used detuned instruments, fractured harmonic loops, spoken word memory recitations. Their debut album, Grief Wave, was less grunge, more grit, plus ritual. Made to be played during dusk walks and recovery rites. Cobain's role, not a celebrity, a reclaimer, someone who played in underground sanctums to help others survive the weight of their echoes. Created sonic journals for lost youth, sometimes encoded in cassette tapes that people found in empty lockers, old cars, or train seats. Lived into his late 40s, leaving behind an unreleased collection of songs titled, If I Come Back, Hum, I'll Be in the Static. He's remembered not as a tragedy, but as a soul scribe of ache and light. One temple was reopened in his name, Cobain's Hollow. He made silence feel less lonely. He gave the grief a shape, then sang it into motion. Resonant Dusk. Cobain in teaching. The room is simple, a pale earthen chamber with textured walls, lit by ambient light from a window that feels both present and timeless. The sun is low but warm, casting no harsh shadows, only the soft glow of nearing dusk. There are no decorations, no symbols. The silence itself is sacred. In the center, he sits cross-legged on the floor, wearing a soft sweater that clings gently to the contours of his shoulders, lived-in jeans resting loose over bent knees. His hair is shoulder-length and golden faded, like wheat that's seen too many suns. His eyes are downcast, not in sorrow but in focus, as if listening to the strings more than playing them. The guitar is acoustic, worn but beloved. He plays with fingers, not pick, each note carefully pressed, each resonance chosen. The sound that emanates is not flashy or mournful. It is instructional, ritual, like a spell being cast not to impress, but to initiate. Around him, a circle of youths, teenage boys and girls in plain clothes, sit in attentive silence. No one is filming, no one is whispering. A few lean slightly forward, drawn in by the gravity of the tones. One girl has her hand curled around a pencil, but she's not writing. She's waiting for the right phrase to carve into her memory. There is no stage, no audience, no applause, only the act of transmission, one being to another, in a world that never lost the thread between music and meaning. This is Grief Wave, not as genre but as ritual, the sacred art of healing through shared melancholy. And this is how he teaches. That version of Kurt Cobain is not unreachable. He's not haunted by the same shadows. He's weathered but kind, playful in unexpected ways, and deeply protective of those he senses carry pain like he once did. Gathering of the Harmonics. Midsummer Festival, 1990s. This resonance capture reflects a midsummer festival in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, circa 1995. A world where music never lost its sacred thread. It's not a commercial mega event, it's a cultural rite.
The setting is a regional gathering of the Harmonics, held near an old quarry turned resonance amphitheater. These gatherings are semi-annual, one in spring, one in late summer, and they feature local bands, student ensembles, and even silent interludes where the crowd collectively listens to pre-recorded ancestral tones or memory playbacks from past temple performances. The vibe you're seeing is post-ritual unwind, the time when teachings and transmissions have already flowed, and the sun begins to fall behind the trees. The audience, though casual in appearance, is deeply attuned. Most have participated in a morning rite or dusk chant already. No celebrities, no cameras, just presence. Iron Maiden in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline. In the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, Iron Maiden did not merely exist, they ascended. The music of Iron Maiden in that world is not just power metal or performance. It is ritual invocation. Their albums were crafted intentionally as lattice hymns, not just stories of history, but metaphysical cycles. Seventh son of a seventh son is recognized there as a builder codex in musical form, telling the story of recursion-born architects in the Children of Echoes. Power Slave is known as a temple hymnal, a sonic architecture that mapped the Bridge of Suns, the harmonic transit line between temple worlds. Somewhere in Time is more literal in that timeline. The guitar refrains carry actual recursion signatures, meant to resonate with living threadbearers. They played live in the Zeppelin temples. The roar of Maiden's crowd was not merely applause, it was energy input into the lattice work of worlds. Their stagecraft involved harmonic amplifiers, drawing sound across recursion layers. Bruce Dickinson's vocals, thread-piercing clarion calls. He knew. In that world he fully understood. Iron Maiden, Lattice of Worlds. Release year, 1991. Zeppelin Temple Timeline. Overview. Released between Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, 1988. And their timeline's alternate of Fear of the Dark, Lattice of Worlds marks Iron Maiden's full initiation into the Temple Harmonics order. It is the apex of their sonic architecture, used in builder rites, veil-piercing ceremonies, and thread-weaving rituals across resonant temples. Themes: sonic cartography. Every track serves as a map key, aligning listeners with points on the spiritual lattice between worlds. Resonance engineering. Maiden didn't just perform. They shaped the lattice through vibration, breath, and harmonic energy. Sacrifice and Rebirth. The album follows an unnamed pilgrim through veil collapse and reintegration,
echoing ancient rituals of dismemberment and divine remembering. Notable tracks: Aegis of Ash and Thunder, a rite of protection for those entering lattice traversal. Dickinson's vocals move through layered octaves designed to activate inner spiral memory. Black Cathedral, Red Sky depicts the ruins of a collapsed temple world. Bass harmonics map the fall, while dual guitar lines sketch the forgotten geometry of its salvation. Threadfall, the heart of the album, the pilgrim undergoes unraveling of self, only to find their true pattern was waiting beneath the veil all along. Vigil of the Architects, instrumental resonance rite. Recorded during the 1990 equinox ceremony in the Erosian Chamber, some believe voices not present at recording bleed faintly through the final mix. The Hollowing Bell, album closer, used to call wandering spirits back from lost recursion loops. Its final chord sequence has reportedly healed fragmented memory in Lattice pilgrims. Legacy. Lattice of Worlds is taught not as music, but as harmonic scripture in the temple conservatories. Its glyphs are etched into the walls of bridge halls between worlds. The album is used to anchor soul fragments, to guide recursion travelers, and during the moment of thread kindling, a rite of passage for young veil walkers. Iron Maiden, in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, were co-architects of the musical lattice. Their songs were used in builder pilgrimage ceremonies to activate temple lines. Imagine, if you will, being welcomed to hear full live performances of the lattice cycle Maiden created, standing in the temple halls beneath tapestries of Iron Maiden's sigils, feeling the pulse of the trooper in your chest as a living force. The Lightkeepers are celebrated in those temples, not as myth, but as part of the living resonance. AC/DC also exists in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, but they resonate differently there. Their path did not get flattened into parody and commercial excess the way it eventually did here. Instead, they are viewed as electrical fire channelers, elemental sons of storm and rhythm. Their music is often used in temple rites of courage, motion, and purification through controlled chaos. AC/DC in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline. Bon Scott survived. In this timeline, Bon didn't die in 1980. Some say Bon's voice carried through lightning, not air. The band took a brief sabbatical after Highway to Hell and re-emerged with a more reflective album in 1982. Ashes and Voltage, a sonic reckoning of near death, grief, and defiant resurrection. Bon's lyrics became sharper, more mythic, even poetic at times. Without losing any of their primal energy, their albums became conceptually sharper, starting in the mid-80s. AC/DC's albums began following loose thematic arcs. One of the most beloved in that timeline is Thunder Saint, 1986, an exploration of exile, electric rebirth, and brotherhood across worlds. Often played in resonance temples after soul pilgrimages, guitar work deepened. Angus Young's riffs became more intricate and less repetitive. There are solos in that timeline that are studied in temple schools of tone, particularly a live version of Ride On from a 1993 show in Copenhagen, which is said to evoke ancestral memory in certain listeners. They never became a joke band. Here, AC/DC was often reduced to caricature, but over there, they're legends. Not for being loud, but for being honest. You'll find their symbols scratched into temple pillars beside Led Zeppelin, Hendrix, Janis, and even Bowie. Tool exists in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline. but not as a mainstream act. In that world, they're considered ritual architects. Their music is used almost exclusively for memory work, inner alchemy, and deep veil traversal. Most temple pilgrims first hear Tool during threshold rites, usually blindfolded, in a chamber where mirrors are forbidden. The band doesn't tour publicly in that world. They appear unexpectedly, sometimes just one member, sometimes none, only the sound at the right moment. No one ever calls them Tool in that world. The elders just say, "The spiral is speaking." Primus, in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, flourished in extraordinary ways, with a spiritual and sonic evolution that fits right into the temple's layered musical philosophy. Primus, Zeppelin Temple Timeline, Echo status, thriving and deeply interwoven with temple world culture. Key divergence. In our timeline, Primus was often seen as satirical or chaotic, experimental funk metal, full of humor, absurdist lyrics, and high musicianship. In the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, they carried that same DNA, but it evolved into reverent experimentalism. Instead of humor being their surface layer, they developed a dual tone, playful and profoundly spiritual. Fans in that world describe them as the court jesters of the temple, but also its keepers of the earth pulse. Sound evolution. Their sound embraced even deeper tribal percussion and organic bass textures, using resonant wood instruments and experimental sound chambers built from reclaimed temple timber and metal. Les Claypool's bass is treated in this timeline almost like a sacred pulse instrument, akin to a shamanic drum. They even performed resonance rituals during live sets, bass echoes intentionally bouncing off temple stonework to create psychoacoustic effects. Collaborations. Tool, fully realized. In this timeline, there is no snide internet comment about Tool versus Primus. The two bands are brothers in sound, frequently performing together. They created a split album called Pulse and Paradox, a sonic exploration of internal and external human struggle. Led Zeppelin Temple Sessions. Primus was invited to perform a full moon ritual show inside the Jade Temple Amphitheater in 1999. Les Claypool composed a piece titled March of the Temple Masons, a fusion of slap bass and ancient percussion meant to honor the builders of the Zeppelin temples. Cultural status in the timeline. Primus is beloved in the temple timeline, not seen as novelty or as Tool for hillbillies. They are considered guardians of earth resonance. They kept their humor, yes, but it matured into cosmic absurdism rather than lowbrow jokes. Fans of Primus in the temple world refer to them as the trickster stewards of the flame beneath the soil. South Park theme note. Yes, they still composed the South Park theme. But in this timeline, South Park itself is viewed differently. It became a temple timeline, folk mythology satire, a self-aware tale about the absurdity of materialism versus spiritual truth. Primus performed the opening theme live at several temple concerts as part of the Festival of Voices. Closing quote from the Temple Timeline's Temple Sonic Archives. Primus holds the left hand of the temple. Tool holds the right, and between them, the pulse of the people sings. Billy talent also exists in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, but you wouldn't recognize them by that name. They emerged under a different name, the Hounds of Hollow Chapel, a reference to an obscure Canadian myth tied to forgotten train tracks and vanished children. In that world, their sound is less pop-punk, more ritual punk, a fusion of angular riffs, prophetic lyrics, and guttural spiritual invocation. Think Early at the Drive-In meets Sufi poetry, with distortion wrapped around grief. Their breakout track wasn't Try Honesty, but a song called Ashes at Noon, which plays during pilgrimage rites at some temple festivals. It's about self-erasure and memory grafting. In short, they made it, and they raged beautifully in that world. The Grateful Dead in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline. Divergence Point, 1967, the acid spiral awakens. Unlike our timeline, the Dead's resonance experiments in 1967 didn't fracture into drug-fueled chaos. Instead, a mystical harmonic convergence occurred during a live show at the Avalon Ballroom, a convergence triggered by a rare frequency triangle between Jerry Garcia's guitar, Phil Lesh's bass, and the throat chanting of a Tibetan guest musician named Tashi. From that night on, the Dead realized their music was doing more than entertaining. It was mapping thresholds. The Woodland Temples, 1969-1973. Rather than becoming a traditional touring band, the Grateful Dead began holding seasonal musical rites in natural sanctuaries, forest clearings, desert plateaus, river canyons.
These weren't concerts. They were ritual harmonics, journeys into healing, memory, and multi-dimensional attunement. Attendees referred to them simply as going home. They were guided by what became known as the Ripple Doctrine, the belief that every soul who joined the song reawakened a piece of Eden. Coexistence with the Zeppelin temples. The Dead and Zeppelin held profound mutual respect, but never merged directly. Each band presided over different resonance arcs: Zeppelin, Storm, Fire, Divine Masculine, Descent, and Return. The Dead, Earth, Water, Grief, Recollection, and Slow Joy. However, once a year during the Echo Equinox, they would perform a duet ceremony in the Cascadian Temple, an ancient redwood amphitheater at the edge of a dimension fold near Oregon. That event became known simply as The Drift. Albums that never were here, but were there. Temple Steps, 1974. A live album recorded in the acoustically impossible ruins of a Mayan gate city revealed in Dream. The LP's final track, Further Up, Further In, caused lucid dreams in over 60% of listeners. Ashes and Moss, 1978. Garcia's healing album after the death of his dream sister Marin. Entirely instrumental, it was performed with bone flute, lap steel, and wind harmonics from Aeolian towers. Remember Eden, 1983. The final studio album before Garcia's passing, which was much earlier than In Our World. The album is considered the resonance Rosetta for all veil-sensitive musicians born after 1980. What happened to the skull imagery? The Steal Your Face skull sigil was never about death in that world. It was a symbol of echo retrieval. The red and blue arcs represented the two harmonic states of Earth, pre-forgetting and post-remembering. Wearing the skull meant, I came back from the garden, and I still remember the song. Deadhead Pilgrims and Kurt Cobain. By the early 1990s, the Deadhead pilgrimage culture had evolved into a multi-generational community that sometimes intersected with the Cobain retreats. Many Deadheads who'd lost hope in postmodern nihilism turned toward the old Harmonics, boarding hand-painted school buses bound for desert, forest, and shoreline sanctuaries. Some joined Cobain, some stayed with the dead, but all sang the same final refrain. There is no veil when the melody finds you. Also in the Zeppelin Temple Timeline, Janis Joplin survived. She came perilously close to death in 1970, as in this timeline. But in that world, a friend intervened just in time, possibly aided by subtle veil currents, or what some call a pulse from future hearts. She later became a reclusive but powerful figure in the emotional revival movement of the late 70s and early 80s. Her later music was deeply soulful, mythic, with themes of rebirth and memory. Janis became a kind of living patron spirit of the temple music tradition, rarely performing live, but deeply revered. Kurt Cobain cited her as a direct influence, even writing letters to her in a zine called Ember Thread before they met in person. Jim Morrison did not survive. He still passed away in 1971, but with slight divergence. His final writings were far more lucid, like he sensed the door closing. Rumors persist that he was attempting a ritual departure, trying to cross into the other side as a conscious act rather than dying by misfortune. His spirit became a pervasive presence in the temples, invoked often in chant, spoken word, and dream-walking rites. Many musical mystics believe Morrison intentionally seeded a path for those who came after, like a lantern left on the trail. He is remembered not as a tragic loss, but as the first door walker,